Hey everybody, good evening. It is Sunday, April 14th, 2024. I hope you had a good weekend. I just got into Boise and it looks like a bunch of people are joining us, so I will wait just a minute. We have a lot to talk about tonight. It's going to be a busy week, I imagine, in the Chad Daybell case, as the judge announced last week that we expect a full week of testimony, that there likely will not be any days off. There has been a few days off last week as we got things settled and got things going, but it sounds like the witnesses will be taking their place, and I'm going to preview as much as I can tonight. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. I hope you had a great weekend. What'd you do? It was a beautiful day in eastern Idaho. I went home for the weekend and spent some time with my family. My son had his first soccer game ever. He's 5. And, you know, at that age, it's just so fun to watch the kids because they're kind of scared of the ball. They run any which direction, but he had a good time and we had a good time and celebrated my 43rd birthday. So thank you all who sent me messages. I apologize if I didn't get back to you, but we went out for breakfast as a family on yesterday. And then my wife and I went out for dinner at a Mexican restaurant last night and did some furniture shopping. And anyway, ready for the week ahead. As I said, we have a full week ahead and there's a lot to talk about. So let's get going. What can we expect this week? Well, coming up tonight, we're going to talk about what we've learned so far from the one witness that we've had on the stand, Detective Hermosillo with Rexburg Police. He was on the stand for all of Thursday and half of Wednesday. Who could take the stand this week? The witness list is sealed, but we kind of have an idea, perhaps, about who could be taking the stand and getting questioned. I want to revisit the police visit to Lori Vallow's apartment in Rexburg. This was talked a lot. This was talked about a lot last week during John Pryor's cross-examination and especially during Detective Hermosillo's testimony. I want to play you audio from that encounter. And, we'll talk about that. Also, Melanie Gibb. This is a woman that the jury is not familiar with. If you have followed the case, you know who she is, and you know that she spoke with me back in 2020 when this case first broke. And I want to revisit some of the parts of that interview what she said to me at that time, and also what she said on the witness stand. I realized, I've been so immersed in this story for 4 years, and many of you have too, but many of you are brand new to this case. You don't know the ins and outs. A lady came up to my wife over the weekend and said, I've just started to follow this Chad Daybell case, and she had a bunch of questions for Erica about this and this and this. So if you are one of those people, I did a kind of a what you need to know Courtroom Insider back before the trial started. I believe it was around March 30th or 29th. You can go back and watch that on our YouTube channel, and hopefully that can get you up to speed, because there's a lot. Well, it won't get you completely up to speed, but there is a lot to talk about, a lot that has happened in this case. And so there's some parts of what Melanie Gibb told me back in 2020, a few weeks before the kids were found. We did not know where the kids were at that point, but Melanie Gibb walked me through the experience she had with Chad, and she testified about this at Lori Vallow's trial last year, and I imagine she will get called to the stand in this trial too. So we'll talk about what she said. We'll, of course, remember Tammy, Tylee, and JJ, and we will answer your questions. So what have we learned thus far in the case? Well, we had opening statements last week from both the defense and the prosecution. The prosecutors really drilled in on the fact that this is a case about money and power and sex, and that this is a case where Chad Daybell spent a lot of time with Lori Vallow, even though he apparently lied to the police. We're going to talk about that visit to Lori Vallow's apartment. That came up. We've learned also that Chad Daybell's children will testify in this trial. And John Pryor said they will testify to the fact that their mom was sick, that Tammy Daybell was sick and not feeling well and would not go to the doctor. That's kind of new. We, of course, were heard about these gruesome graphic photos of the children when they were found in Chad Daybell's backyard on June 9th of 2020. The jurors saw those photos. We did not see them in the courtroom. The public did not see them on the transmission, the live stream, but the jury saw them, and that's what matters. We learned, according to Chad's attorney, John Pryor, that Chad's life was great until he met Lori. He had maybe had a speeding ticket, and that was it. He was not a troublemaker. He was a proud father of 5, living a life in Rexburg, Idaho, writing books, running a publishing company. And then he met Lori. And John Pryor says that's when everything changed. And now it appears that they're pointing the finger, of course, at Lori Vallow. And also Alex Cox, her brother. A lot of talk last week about the paintball gun incident. We went over this last week. Really wasn't a paintball gun, according to the investigators. It was an AR-15, but Tammy Daybell thought it was a paintball gun when this man showed up in her driveway 10 days before she died and started firing at her, and she called 911, and her son-in-law called 911, and 10 days later, she dies in her bed. We learned about that. We learned, too, John Pryor made a big deal about this to Detective Hermosillo, that when police originally made contact with Chad Daybell, the very first time they went to Lori Vallow's apartment in Rexburg, they met Alex Cox, they met Chad Daybell. They introduced themselves. They didn't have body cameras on. And John Pryor, it appeared, was trying to poke holes in, why didn't you record this? I mean, Chad Daybell's version of events is different. Basically, what Detective Hermosillo said is that Chad Daybell lied to them. First of all, they asked Alex Cox for where Lori was, and then they asked for her phone number. Alex said he didn't have it. Chad said he didn't have it, but they knew at that point that Chad was married to her. And so they were able to get it out of him after asking a second time. But John Pryor made a big deal of the fact that that encounter was not recorded. So, what was recorded is when the police went back to Lori Vallow's apartment and to check on JJ, to do the welfare check. They did wear a body camera. They played that body camera footage last year in Lori Vallow's case. We got to see it, but they didn't release the video to us, but we have the audio. I'm going to play that for you in a minute. You can listen to how Lori Vallow acts with the police department. Eventually, we will get that footage. When the trial's over, they'll release all the evidence. For now, you'll just have to imagine that, Lori's there and the detectives are there and they're trying to find out where JJ is. Okay, so who will testify? That's the question. Lori Vallow's case had 59 witnesses. This one will likely have more. The question is, in what order? And what will they say? And what will they testify on? Last year, there were witnesses. Ray Hermosillo, by my count last year, had the longest amount of time on the stand. And thus far, he's been the only witness. There were some days where they'd go through 4 or 5 or 6 witnesses, quick witnesses, to go on and say, yes, I was the dean of students at BYU, Idaho, and Tylee Ryan never enrolled. And that's basically the end of the testimony. There were others that went into much deeper detail. Court was not held Friday because Judge Boyce said that the prosecution's witness schedule was running ahead of schedule. And that their witness wasn't there. So that makes you believe that this witness is likely traveling from out of town. Probably, maybe, from Arizona. So who could it be? Well, and also one other thing. Let me back up. I forgot this point. Hermosillo will be back on the stand. When John Pryor finished cross-examining him last week, he said, you're still under subpoena. I intend to call you again. So we will hear more from him as a defense witness. Okay, so what do we know about who might testify? Well, it could be likely at one point, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, Chandler Detective Nathan Duncan. He took the stand last year, talked about kind of the Arizona angle, how he got involved in the Idaho angle. We also could hear from Melanie Gibb. I believe John Pryor said we will hear from Melanie Gibb. Melanie Gibb and John Pryor are no strangers to each other. You may recall in August of 2020, right after Chad was charged, there was a preliminary hearing. And this is where the prosecutor, it's kind of a mini trial. They have to persuade the judge that they have enough evidence that this case should go to trial. And it was 2 days in August of 2020. We were right in the midst of COVID. No one could go in the courthouse, but they did live stream it. So we carried it for you live. And the judge did indeed determine, Judge Edens, that there was enough evidence to have this case advanced to a higher level, to the district court, which is where we are now. Well, one of the witnesses in that preliminary hearing was Melanie Gibb. And John Pryor really drilled her, just kind of really got into it with her, and that will likely happen again. She will probably get called as a witness. And she lives in Arizona, spends some time in Utah, so, I mean, she could be one who would take some time to travel up here. We could hear from her boyfriend, husband, David Warwick. These two were the last people, other than perhaps the defendants, Lori and Chad and Alex Cox, who saw J.J. Vallow alive. Because you may recall, they were visiting Rexburg the night of J.J. Vallow's last night on this earth, according to the police. So David Warwick will likely testify of that. Zulema Pastenes will testify. This is Alex Cox's wife. She lives in Arizona. She's the one who Alex said to, "I think I'm being Chad and Lori's fall guy." He realized this before he died. This is one aspect of the case I wish we could learn or learn more about. What happened to Alex? How did he just suddenly die right after Tammy Daybell's exhumed, right when the walls are closing in, right when everything's coming together? How does he tell his wife that if anything happens to me, there's a safe upstairs with a gun and I have money up there and in a plastic bag for you, and then he dies like the next day? I don't know. That I've heard several people say to me that may be the only coincidence in all of this, but if it's a coincidence, that is a crazy coincidence. I want to know what you think. What do you think happened to Alex Cox? Was it just a coincidence? The autopsy came back and they said he died of a heart issue. I don't remember the exact cause, but it was a heart issue. And we spoke with medical experts who said you could not cause this you couldn't force your body to have this issue. But I don't know. So Zulema will take the stand. Zulema believed she could control the weather. Zulema was part of these casting ceremonies with Lori and Melanie Gibb, and they would get together and cast evil spirits out of people. Zulema believed that Alex tried to kill her. Now, looking back, she told the police that on their marriage day, he wanted to give her a massage. But they went to Walmart and they got a big plastic tarp. And he laid it out in their hotel room, and she lied down for the massage, and she said she felt so drowsy, like to the point, where you need to get up, but you're just so tired you can't move. She said that's how she felt as Alex gave her this massage. The next thing she remembered is he was on the phone with Lori or someone, Chad, somebody. And then the rest of the night, first night of their marriage, Alex was really standoffish. She sat in the corner of the hotel room on his phone. Didn't even want to engage with her. Didn't want to watch a movie, nothing. Could she have been another victim? That's what she believed. Could have been another person that maybe had a life insurance policy. Anyway, Zulema will take the stand, they have said. Brandon Boudreaux, he will take the stand. He took the stand in Lori Vallow's case. He was the second witness. It was a powerful testimony. He got very emotional talking about J.J. Tiley, about his, relationship with Lori. Because it's a little different with Chad, I don't know if he would take the stand this early as far as this week, but he could, and it's likely he will at one point. We have another Chandler Police Sergeant, Nathan Moffat. He was involved in the investigation in the early days. He could probably take the stand. So there's our list of who might testify. I don't know the order. The order's been sealed. I do know several people that have subpoenas. They're not supposed to talk to us. They're not allowed to watch any of the coverage or read any of the testimony. And when they get up on the stand, the judge will ask them, have you seen any of this trial? Witnesses aren't supposed to coordinate with witnesses. They're supposed to be kind of siloed off in their own way. Okay, I want to go back now to that visit in November of 2019 at the Pioneer Road apartment town houses complex where Lori Vallow lived. Last week, we saw the photos inside the apartment when police broke in and Lori was not there. Remember, there was a bunch of hangers in the closet, but Detective Hermosillo testified it's as if all of them had been ripped, all the clothes had been ripped off the hangers because someone had to pack really quick. The timeline of events for that period of time, Fremont County Sheriff's calls Rexburg Police and says Arizona police are searching for a Jeep that may have been used in connection to a homicide. It's in Rexburg, we believe. Can you go get eyes on it? Rexburg police goes and sees the Jeep. They've got eyes on it. They do surveillance on it for some time. A couple of days, they see Lori and Chad repeatedly together. Tammy Daybell's been dead less than a month. They are married at this point, Lori and Chad. They'd been to Hawaii and they've been back. Then Rexburg police gets a call for a welfare check on JJ. So they're keeping eyes on this Jeep, and then, oh, JJ's missing. Can you go check on him? Detective Hermosillo goes over to the apartment complex with one other detective, Hope. They see Chad and Alex, who are leaving. They go talk to them. Chad and Alex kind of play dumb, according to the detectives. They say they don't have Lori's phone number. They don't know where JJ was with Melanie Gibb, or I don't remember the exact wording there, but they can't find Lori. So they call Lori, and she calls back. And she says that, I'm here. JJ's with my friend, Melanie Gibb, in Arizona. Well, then the police go back to the townhouses and to check on the welfare of JJ. And this is what happens at this point. After this point, Lori takes off with Chad. They're out of there. And that's when they likely go to Hawaii. So here is the audio. Sorry, it's not video. It is audio from the body camera from that encounter.
This is my body cam footage as myself and Lieutenant Ball approach the apartment number 175 the first time on the 26th. Okay.
Her car's out there too. Where? In the back. It's blue. Blue Subaru.
Hi. You Lori? Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got a minute? You alone, or that help? Or?
My brother's here.
Okay. This is Detective Stubbs.
Hello.
So, we're here.
Yeah, this is a big mess. I just talked to the guy on the phone.
And what did he ask you?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So, JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh,
Hey.
You got a notepad?
No? Want me to get one?
No. Come here. You mind if he comes in?
No, come on.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son
Melanie.
has autism. Her name is Melanie Gibb. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call him.
Yeah.
Bert.
Discord.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is
concerned
it? Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking, and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a
What's
lot of
going
stuff
on?
has gone on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So
Well, that's why we're concerned, because it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that lives here, obviously. He's kind of my protector. My other brother that was in with my husband, who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy. No way.
Now,
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into the school there because I tried to put him in school here, public school at Kennedy.
Okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted by us. Okay, so her son, who's a drug addict,
Okay.
had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him,
Okay.
gave him to the grandmother. She came and got him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved
By
him and taking
us,
care.
who we call
My
him?
husband and I, who died earlier this year.
Okay.
He passed away. Since he
Sorry to
passed
hear that.
away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff.
The,
She's kind of the paternal friend.
okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That's
I'm
what I
sorry.
needed. The paternal grandmother.
He has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I had him in a special needs school there. She was trying to, so what happened was my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her, right?
To
his sister,
okay.
who got $1 million when he died, and we got nothing for me to raise JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million. So I knew she was going to try to sue me for him, or
JJ.
yeah, because she now has this $1 million, so she can hire people to help him, and I have nothing.
But you have
nothing,
legal
but
custody.
he's my son. I adopted him when
Right.
he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing that wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am not a good person. I've raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
We don't want to cause a lot of trouble. How long have you been here?
we've only been here since September.
Okay.
We moved up here in September. My daughter to go to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYU.
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare, but I'm going to go back to Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school. He couldn't do the school here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. Like, it's too hard. But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever.
Okay.
And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. Like, she's been horrible to me since my husband died.
My understanding, she never called to try to get the child, hey, I'm interested in the child back, but
I
that,
know, but she sends me these emails with like the date and like she's putting up court stuff, like she's documenting. I haven't heard from him in all this time, and so I've told her that he's fine. But
See, and we hadn't heard any of that as far as,
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
and our only concern in this whole thing
Yeah, is that he's fine.
is the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on the, and then
So
we
I
were just a
called
little
her.
weirded out when, and I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. They
Is
just I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. I'm like, why are police coming to my
Well,
door?
they
What did I do?
they said they were out visiting with 2 guys, and I'm assuming
Who is-
one's your brother.
Who was this? Yeah.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were
Who was
2.
visiting?
Well, we had 2 detectives over here trying to,
Looking for you a
Oh,
little while ago.
because I was at the store.
and they ran into probably one of your brothers in
My
the back
brother
here.
and his friend, probably.
Oh,
They've
who's
been
that?
moving. Chad?
Chad from around here?
Mhm.
What's his last name? Bill. Okay. All right.
So it's just a mess that is constantly causing me trouble.
Chad the Daybell?
He's an author.
Doesn't he live like out in the? Isn't that the Chad Daybell that? Didn't his wife pass away recently? Is that him?
I don't know,
I bet it is. Chad Daybell. Yeah.
but it sounds familiar as an
I
author.
think I know.
Right.
I think I know one of his. He's got a couple of daughters. Is that
He has lots of kids.
okay? I'll bet it's safe. All right. Well, maybe anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We don't mean to be a
I'm
problem.
sorry
We're
that
just-
people are constantly knocking on my door looking for me, and I just don't want to be found. So
Have you had problems? Because I think we've only had.
well, the reason I'm moving is because the brother that was going to kill me, that we found emails and texts with my husband at the time, came showing up here. So he found out where I was, and he was knocking on my door.
No, this was your brother?
One of my brothers.
He showed up here and was knocking on your door.
He lives in Kansas.
And you said something about you were getting threatening emails?
Well, no, just after my husband passed, I found emails and texts between them that they were planning all this stuff to get rid of me.
Do we need to worry about him coming over?
Well, that's when I'm moving back. I'm moving, and I'm not going to be in a place. I'm going to live with my friend, Melanie. Don't tell her.
Oh, you can call. I'm gonna take care of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, just a nightmare. I mean, I canceled the insurance policy since my husband passed, so there's no money if they can. And what are they going to do with JJ and Tyler? Like, what do people think?
Okay.
So,
Well, if you have a problem, shows back up, feel free to call us. We'll come and run him off or something. Okay? All right.
appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get out of here. Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya. Boy, we learn a lot from that call, or we learn a lot of stuff that's proven to not be true, obviously. And I can just imagine what those detectives were thinking. They've testified of this, like, you know, this was the early stages, but they knew more than they were letting on. They knew that Chad and Lori were married. They knew that the grandmother, Kay, was the one that called in the welfare check. They had been trying to get a hold of Melanie Gibb in Arizona to find out if JJ was indeed there. So they have this encounter with Lori. They then go back to get a search warrant to go inside the house. They get the warrant early, or it was either late that night or early the next morning. But either way, they go over early the next morning. Lori's gone. House is empty. Alex is gone. And the other unit where Melanie Pulowski, at that point, but Boudreaux was staying, is gone too. And they find all of those weapons. I don't know if you could see it in court last week, but inside the garage, there were multiple guns, knives. There was a Halloween mask. There was these Kevlar suits that you could, it almost like hazmat suits. I mean, I sometimes wonder if Alex was upstairs when the police showed up, if they had said, we want to look around to see if JJ's here at that point, like, and had gone upstairs. I don't even want to speculate, but what if Alex had done something? Like, I mean, we know that Alex would do anything for Lori Vallow, his sister. And at that point, Chad Daybell had given him that blessing that was talked about in the previous trial that will likely come up here. And if he needed to do whatever he could for the cause, for the mission, whatever, maybe nothing would have happened. Hopefully nothing would have happened, but it could have ended crazy. So, bottom line, Lori tells the cops that JJ is with her friend Melanie Gibb. Now, I want to play a clip about Melanie Gibb, but I want to kind of tell you the backstory of how this interview came to be. When all of this story broke and, you know, we were putting things together in early 2020, there was one character that kind of emerged at the top that I really wanted to talk to, and it was Melanie Gibb. This was Lori's, like, best friend. Melanie Gibb was there when Chad and Lori met. Melanie Gibb met Lori at a religious type of meeting on a Tuesday night at the church. It wasn't an official church activity type thing, but they met there regardless, and they became instant friends. And they had very similar beliefs. Many would call them fringe beliefs, unique, different type of beliefs. And Melanie Gibb knew a lot about this story. And I found, somebody sent me, or I don't remember Melanie Gibb's email address. And I emailed her and I said, I would love to sit down and talk with you to try to make sense of a lot of what's happening with this story. It can be on or off the record, preferably on, so that I can share it. I didn't get any response. And I left my phone number on there. And one day, several months later, it was May and I'm in the backyard helping my neighbor's helping me. Actually, he's like doing all the work, build some steps on our back patio. And I get a phone call from an Arizona number that I don't recognize, and we're in the middle of this project, and I ignored it. And then the voicemail notification popped up, and it was typed out, and it said, "Nate, this is Melanie Gibb." And I'm like, oh my gosh, Melanie Gibb just called me. And I say to my neighbor, "Can you hold on a minute while I go call her?" This was like 8 o'clock at night. So I go into my car in the front where it's quiet because like all the kids were playing, and I call Melanie Gibb, and she answers, and she says, "I think I'm ready to talk." And I said, "Okay." She goes, I think I'm ready to tell my story. And here's what I want to say. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say everything that I know happened." And she proceeds to tell me that she's ready to share her story. And I say, all right. And we end up talking the next few days. She was visiting Utah from Arizona the following week. And obviously I'm in Idaho. The challenge was we were at the peak of COVID where like nobody was going in anybody's home or anything. And so I've worked with Dateline on this story all this time. And so I was talking with them, and they said, well, we can help. We'll shoot it for you, but it has to be outside because of the COVID thing. And we had to sit 8 feet apart. And we ended up meeting at a park in Utah, like the next week. And my dear friend Shane at Dateline helped me prepare questions. He had like 10 pages of questions because this was, up until now, we really didn't know everything we know now. There was a lot we didn't know. And Melanie Gibb was a key to that. And she had told me nothing was off limits in this interview. She would answer anything. And so I knew we had to take the time to talk to her. And it ended up being a 90-minute interview. We kind of paused halfway through to take a drink of water and whatnot. And I posted it the following week. If you haven't seen it, all 3 parts are on our YouTube channel. But I give you that background to say that what Melanie Gibb said at that interview, she went on to testify months later in Chad Daybell's preliminary hearing, and then last year at Lori Vallow's trial, and likely again this year at Chad Daybell's trial. 2 weeks after this interview, they found the kids. And so at this point, we didn't know if the kids were alive or dead. We didn't know where the kids were. Melanie didn't. And she shared with us some key information that we didn't know at the time about the timeline of all this. So Lori tells the cops, JJ's with Melanie at the movies watching Frozen 2. Here is Melanie's version of events kind of leading up to that day. Did you stay with Lori at that time when you went up to visit her?
Mm-hmm.
And hold on. I'm going to back up a little bit because I didn't set up that clip 100% right. Melanie and Lori had this great friendship. And one day, Lori came to Melanie and said, "I'm moving to Idaho." And she moved to Idaho the end of August, beginning of September of 2019. Melanie then went up to see Lori a few weekends later. That's where they recorded the podcast. That's when David Warwick, her boyfriend at the time, now husband, came to Lori's house. So this is what Melanie testifies or tells me about what happened that weekend that they were there in Idaho. And then we'll get to the part where Lori called her and asked her to lie. Were the kids there?
JJ was.
But Tylee was not.
Tylee was not.
Where was she?
I was told she was at BYU.
BYU in Provo?
Idaho.
BYU in Idaho. Sorry about that. One moment, let me just refresh the screen. This likes to overheat when I do video clips. Okay, now you should be able to see it. It's just buffering here for a minute. The hotel Wi-Fi, I gotta live with it. So Melanie Gibb talks about coming up to Idaho. In case you didn't catch the beginning of that clip, she stays with Lori, but she doesn't see Tylee at all that weekend that she's there. She sees JJ. This was around, let me get you the date, September of 2019. This would have been the weekend of September 18th, 19th, 20th of 2019. And even going into the 21st, which is the Monday. An interesting side note, too, and I don't believe that David, I don't think I've sat down with David Warwick, her boyfriend. He is the one who actually saw JJ possibly for the last time and told police about seeing him and mentioning that to him. Okay, here we go. Did you stay with Lori at that time when you went up to visit her?
Mm-hmm.
And were the kids there?
JJ was.
But Tylee was not.
Tylee was not.
Where was she?
I was told she was at BYU.
BYU in Provo?
Idaho.
BYU in Idaho. Would that have been a normal answer? Like a normal, okay, that makes sense type thing?
Well, I knew that Tylee had had her GED that she got when she was 16 or 17. I'm not sure exactly the age. And so it could have been plausible, but it didn't feel like it. There was definitely question marks. It was question marks for me. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like the truth. I didn't know what to say about it. I wouldn't assume that she had done something to her, so it was kind of, I don't know. It was unusual.
But you didn't question her?
I didn't question it.
Was JJ with you on the walks?
No.
Where was he?
He was at home.
By himself?
His uncle was watching him.
Alex.
Yeah,
Okay. So JJ's home with Alex, but there's no sign of Tylee.
correct.
And how long did you stay with Lori? Was it for a week?
So Thursday to a Monday morning.
I'm assuming Tylee never called her. She never called Tylee.
She didn't even talk about her.
Never spoke about Tylee. Did she speak at all about JJ?
Yeah, I mean, he was all around us, and we were talking about him quite a bit, actually.
What did she say?
As I arrived on the Thursday, she had said that he had turned into a zombie the day before I got there. And she was pointing out behaviors of his, like, look how he's doing this, that's unusual, or look how he's doing that. And she was trying to create uncertainty in me about what I saw his behavior. Like, what do you call that? Like a doubt? A doubt. And I was looking at him, and I thought, well, I don't know, he kind of looks like JJ to me, hyper and angry one minute and kind of chill or crying the next minute. Like, that's how his behaviors always were around me. I don't know if they were always like that, but that's how I noticed him when I was around both of them. And she just gave me a few scenarios of different things he would say. That sounded a little unusual. I didn't hear him say it, but she would share things like he said this or he said that.
Had she talked about zombies before?
Mm-hmm.
And what did she tell you before JJ? What did she teach you about zombies and belief in zombies?
So the first person, as we all know, is Charles, was considered one. And that was brought to Lori's attention by Chad on the phone call. I was in her house when that phone call came in. And he described to her that Charles was no longer Charles, that this unclean spirit that was friends with Charles on the earth, when they used to be friends, had now passed on, and now he is this unclean spirit on the earth roaming around, and now he's attached himself to Charles, and now he has entered his body and taken over it. So he's not really Charles anymore. He's now this guy named Ned Snyder. And so it was when she told me, and she seemed blown out by it. I could tell she was like, that is really different. And she told me, and I thought, that is very unusual. It was just, because Chad had this influence on people because he had visionary experience. He could see things. At least he said, he portrays that he did. But I do believe that when you think somebody can see things or have visionary experiences about things, you tend to kind of believe them more than the average person. Because, if you ask me, I'd say I don't see anything, so you wouldn't take my point of view or my opinion. But if you had somebody that was really good at having visionary, because he often said that it was like the veil was open when he had his near-death experiences. So he often said that veil is open all the time. So he had this way of seeing things that Lori and I didn't have that we didn't have that gift of seeing. But I do have come to understand that that gift has been manipulated by the adversary. And so,
By Satan.
absolutely.
She told him all of this.
She did.
And you're saying Lori even felt uncomfortable with that information that Chad had told her?
In the first day, I'll say the first day that she was trying to absorb it, I knew it was new for her.
And Chad's the one that called Lori and
Absolutely.
said, an evil spirit has attached himself to Charles,
That's right.
named Ned.
That's right.
Any idea where that name came from?
I don't know how he got his information other than she would say he would often sit in his portal and receive revelation about people.
So he's sitting in the portal most likely and received that. And he's telling Lori, you know, Charles has this evil spirit. He's a zombie?
I'm not sure if they used that word in the beginning.
Okay.
They didn't use that word right away. They probably said that someone has taken over his body named this Ned Snyder.
Okay. So that was a lot at the time that we didn't know. Now, probably one of the questions I'm asked the most about this case is, what did I think of Melanie Gibb? Why did I interview Melanie Gibb? Did I believe her? Do I think there's more to the story? A couple things. One, I interviewed her because it's newsworthy. As anybody related to this case, it's newsworthy. She was a key person in this story who had not spoken publicly. The investigators had interviewed her multiple times. She was, I'm not going to say no to that interview. If Lori Vallow calls me today and says, I want to talk to you, I'm going to interview her. I'm going to interview Chad. I hope to interview the attorneys. I hope to, that's how we as journalists do our job. We talk to as many sources as we can. Do I believe everything all of them tell me all the time? No. At that point, I wanted to give her a chance to let her talk. There were some things that came out after that weren't true. I don't remember the specifics of them, or that conflicted with what she said on the stand in court. I don't think there was anything major that came out, but stuff like that. What did I think of what she said? I thought she said a lot of really interesting, crazy stuff that we had not heard at that point. Do I think she should have been charged? I'm asked that a lot. You know, that's not for me to say. And also, I think sometimes people get the Melanies confused. There's Melanie Pawlowski, the niece, Melanie Gibb, the friend. Prosecutors are going to charge if they believe they can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what they're going to do. And if they don't believe they can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, they're not going to charge. You can't charge someone for just talking. Not that I'm saying all these people did was talk. But sometimes there's a lot of smoke there. They just have to have the fire. So I'm not accusing Melanie Gibb of anything like that. I'm just explaining kind of what I've learned along the way. They're not charging Chad Daybell in Arizona in connection to Charles's death and in connection to Brandon Boudreaux's shooting. And do you remember last week what came out was that the message how the life insurance got changed? And Lori told Chad that, and Chad responded something with like, it'd be interesting to find out if it got changed before or after he had 2 bullets in his chest. But the Arizona authorities have said they don't believe they could get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I set up a minute ago the whole police go to Lori Vallow's townhouse. JJ's not there. In the meantime, they call Melanie Gibb. This is what Melanie Gibb, her version of accounts, when she got that call from Lori.
About this. She goes, well, I need to, it's time for JJ to, I don't know how she worded it, but it was something to the effect, it's time for, he's in the way of our mission, so we need to send him to Kay's house. That was kind of like the idea, is what could we do? And so we talked about Kay, and we talked about some of her family members that could actually take him on. And so we talked about, what that conversation would be like with Kay, and she wasn't sure if Kay would really receive him. And so we talked about just different ideas about, him going there. And so that was the plan that I knew of, is he's going to Kay's house. She told me that. I know that from what I saw in one of the video clippings, that she also told a neighbor that as well. And So that's what I believe was going to happen to him. So I left thinking that that's where he was going, his case, for sure. I didn't doubt that.
So as her friend, you're saying, okay, he's a zombie. He's
Yeah.
in the way of your mission. She
Right.
said that. So you guys came up with a plan of why don't we let Kay take care of him or someone in Kay's family?
Yeah.
Had you dealt with Kay before?
I met her briefly, but I didn't interact with her.
Okay.
It was like, hi, how are you? I'm Melanie, and that was about it.
So even though Lori had an issue with Kay, she was willing that day at least to say, yeah, we'll send JJ to Kay.
Correct.
You leave Rexburg
That's right.
thinking JJ's going to go to Kay's house.
That's right.
You never saw Tylee the whole weekend.
Correct.
Because she was at college, allegedly. What happens from there?
This is where there's a big turn in my life. This is when it hits the fan. This is the part that I hate talking about.
Yeah.
This was hard for me. I'm sure I talked to her a few times on the phone. She did express that he went to Kay's house. Okay. So I don't know when she told me, but I would say within a short period of time after I left.
She called and said he's at Kay's.
Right. And she said, oh, yeah, we met up in the airport and she received him and he's going to go stay. I mean, she gave me the whole story. The whole story. So I just, I believed it. And it's about Thanksgiving and everything changed. I thought he was safe. And I get a call from Chad 2 days before Thanksgiving. I still feel emotional about it. He said, Melanie, it's Chad. When the police call, don't pick up the phone. And my heart just dropped. I was so confused. I'm like, what? He says, yeah, the police are over at Lori's house checking on JJ. And I'm like, JJ's not with Kay? No. My heart dropped deeper. And I just knew something was wrong, but I didn't know. I didn't understand. Like, when you believe your friends are good people, you couldn't believe that they could do something like that.
What was Chad's demeanor like on the phone? Was he stoic? What was he like?
He was very nervous.
He was nervous.
He was very scared. He did not sound himself. Very unsure, very quivery almost. Yeah, it was a hard moment.
So that call comes completely out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Wasn't expecting that at all.
He says, don't pick up the phone when the police call. He's scared. He's nervous. He says, they're going to call you because they're at Lori's house.
And she's going to tell them that JJ's with you.
She's going to tell the cops that JJ's with you in Arizona.
No, I was in Utah at the time.
You were in Utah.
Yeah.
First of all, that's a bombshell that's just thrown.
I can't even describe how I felt. They put me in a very awkward situation.
Were you able to even question him, or was your mind just...
I was questioning in my mind, but verbally, there was nothing coming out really. I did say, why? She said, well, Kay is trying to kidnap him. And I said, how do you know that? Well, through emails. You know the emails. I said, I have not read your emails. What do they say? She said, Kay had mentioned, it's not like I'm going to kidnap JJ or anything. And I did think to myself, that doesn't sound like a threat.
How soon after did Lori then call?
I can't recall, but it was soon after.
Soon after. And what does she say?
She sounded like everything was wonderful and great. She had an upbeat voice, and I was like, wow, she's positive. And that it gave me a little hope that, hey, maybe, it's not what I'm thinking the worst.
What did she say?
She said, hey, everything's fine. Everything's okay. And I can't quote exactly all the things I said. So she led me to believe that everything was fine and that, that JJ was, I'm trying to remember how she worded it, that she was protecting JJ, something to the fact that they were not just Kay, but it felt like many people were after him. And so she was trying to protect him. That's what she told me. But I've talked to the police before. I was like, when you get a gut feeling, that's real, right? And they're like, yeah, you got to go on gut instinct.
And what was your gut feeling?
If something was terribly wrong. I mean, it just stayed in there for a long time, that gut feeling. It did not feel comfortable. Something was telling me something's off here. I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to think that she would do anything like that. I really, really wanted to believe her.
What did she ask you to do?
she asked me to tell the police that JJ was with me, and that when I went, because I was going to go and drive down to Arizona for Thanksgiving, and that he was going to go with me, which I didn't know any of this, right? It's all new to me. That she had made it sound like we had arranged it or something. But anyway, he was going to go down to Arizona with me. And she was going to come down there later and pick him up. So that was a foreign idea to me. I'd never heard of that before. So it was very, I can't even tell you how uncomfortable. You know, after I get to Arizona and everything, I was talking to Alex because I wanted to meet with him. And he goes, I cannot believe she threw you under the bus like that.
So Alex came to your defense.
And I said, I can't believe she did either. I said, I can't believe she said that. I don't, that was not smart.
Tell me about what she asked you to do at the movie theater.
So she said, I've told the police that you were at Frozen 2 with JJ, and to get your cell phone out and just take a picture of random kids running around to make it look like you had them with you. And I was thinking to myself, nah, I don't make stuff up like that. I don't do that. So I'm just in shock still. I really, really was in a shock type of, it's just, you know, everybody's listening. Everybody has different opinions, what they're going to think about all this, right? But in that moment, I really did not know what to say.
And you weren't in the right frame of mind to question her.
Right, I wasn't.
And so you hang up that call. Did she say anything else other than go to the movie theater, take pictures of random kids, and talk about the Arizona plan?
I know that at one point we talked about her going on a trip with Chad's children to California. She might have mentioned it during that time, or I called her shortly after that when I was driving down to Arizona. It was between that conversation and that, I can't recall, but that they were going to go on a family vacation and that they were just going with the kids, his kids.
And that trip came up last week during testimony about Chad, after Tammy died, went with Lori and his children down to Knott's Berry Farm, I believe. Knott's Berry Farm in California, and did that trip. So there you have it. I noticed some of you said you went back and watched Melanie Gibbs' testimony last year. If you really want to dive deep and compare what she said in our interview to her testimony, you can. I do think that John Pryor will question her. We'll have a lot of questions for her when she takes the stand. But ultimately, does her testimony sway jurors or not? You know, 95% of cases nationwide end in plea agreements, because the 5% that do go, you worry about the risk of, all it takes is one juror to be persuaded that no, it wasn't, it was all Lori, versus no, it was all Chad. So that's Melanie Gibbs' version of events, and it'll be interesting if she does take the stand this week. You can, think about what she said here to me back in 2020, 4 years ago, what she says now. The mind, it's interesting. I've read all these books about how the mind, we forget stuff, or we believe things happened a certain way, and then we are convinced they did, and then we think it is truth, like absolute truth. And I don't know about you, but I've thought of certain events happening a certain way, and then I'll go back and read about them or watch a video, and I'm like, oh, that happened a little differently. So we'll see what she has to say. But tomorrow, 8:30 in the morning, that is when the court will resume. We will have that live stream going all day. If you want to watch, you can be sure to subscribe right there to our East Idaho News YouTube channel. Hit the up and the bell, and then you'll get notified when we go live. You can do that. And wherever you're watching from, if you want to follow us on Facebook, we'd appreciate that. And subscribe. You can be caught up to date. I want to get to your questions, but we do have some beautiful photos of JJ and Tylee that I wanted to show you tonight. There's Tylee at Disneyland, and there is JJ. And, it's crazy to think that Tylee would be an adult. She would be over 21 right now if she was still alive, and JJ would be entering into young man. He'd be a young man, but we remember them tonight. We remember Tammy Daybell as well. as this trial continues here in Ada County. Okay, let me get to some of your questions. Before I do that, I want to show you that here's how you can keep up to date on the case. Live updates, as I said, 8:30. If you can't watch, I do live updates on eastidahonews.com. I'll show you right now where you can find those because we get so many emails. Here's your web browser. Go to eastidahonews.com and you will see when we are live with, sorry, the internet is dragging a bit here in the hotel. We are live in the morning. We go live around 8:15 with the actual video stream. It's just a standby graphic, so you can go and watch it as it's loading. And then the second that the court camera turns on, we flip over to that. But on our actual website too, when we have a place that when I start doing the live updates, we have a blue bar right there at the top of eastidahonews.com that you can click on. Here we go. So it's right here, latest updates and video. If you click on that, here is where read live updates, right there. Click on that. There's, if you want to get caught up on Courtroom Insider, or if you want to read the live updates, just click on the day, scroll down, and you will see the most recent is at the top. I don't know how well you can see it on your screen. 3:35 is when we ended last week, and then you just hit refresh to update. And then if you want to watch the live video, here's the library of the live video where you can go on and watch the live video feed. Okay, I hope that helps. Let's go to your questions. And we have a lot of them. We won't do 1,000, but we have a lot. First question, is it true, Nate, you almost quit before the Daybell case to stop working in news? I was having serious thoughts in the summer, fall before this case broke, August, September. I guess I was kind of in a funk or something, but I was thinking about possibly leaving news, doing something different, and spoke with some people about, maybe doing a career change or something. But mentally, I don't know what was wrong. And then this case happened, and my mind completely switched, and I was full steam ahead. And I'm glad I didn't leave it. I like what I do, and I'm glad that I've been able to cover this for so long. Will the public be able to see the autopsy photos? Simple questions, but I had a rude response. And when I asked you if you encourage this, no response from you. So my question is, do you encourage people saying rude and negative things to a simple question? My question was, will the public be able to see the autopsy photos? Okay, so it sounds to me that you asked on my feed or some of our feed if we could see the autopsy photos, and a bunch of people jumped all over you, and you're asking me if I encourage that. No, I don't. Be nice to people, especially if you're on our feeds. Be nice to people. We're all... Being rude doesn't get anywhere. Now, if you're asking about the autopsy photos, when the trial's all over, anybody can go and request the evidence and see them. We won't show them on East Idaho News, even if they were given to us today. I think that that's beyond the line, and what's the news value in that? We've described them to you, the detectives have described them to you, but we won't be showing them to you. And I apologize if people were mean to you about that question. But no, I don't encourage people to be mean. Please address rumors of Chad's prior affairs and Chad shaking while seeing the photos from Paul. There have been some people who have come out that said he had other affairs. I don't have any proof of that or any confirmation of that, or groomed other women. I don't know if he was, I guess you could say he was shaking when he saw the photos last week. It was more like this. Like kind of his head nodding. He wasn't like shaking that I saw. Julia, is it possible to do a toxicology or some other test to see if Tammy was poisoned? The medical examiner testified about this at Lori Vallow's trial, and they said that all of her levels were normal, that there was nothing abnormal in her blood or anything like that, and that she did die of asphyxiation. A lot of people thought she was poisoned because she had pink foam around her mouth, but that turns out, according to the experts, was not because she was poisoned or anything. Cindy says, I find it interesting that Tammy and her son-in-law called 911, but not Chad. I would have thought as a husband he would have made the first call. Any thoughts? Well, I mean, if my wife said a gunman showed up at our driveway and fired at her, I'd be out there the second I could be trying to find out who it was and calling 911. But he didn't. And that, I think that was brought up in the last trial too, that Chad never called 911. The text from Chad has been bothering me. Tammy was an animal lover, but Chad's text is talking about shooting after a raccoon and burning it. Then he said good times. Any idea why or what Tammy's reaction was? He never said he burned it. He said he buried it in the pet cemetery. He saw a raccoon in the middle of the day. Raccoons normally don't come out in the middle of the day. He shot it. He buried it. I don't believe they ever found any sign of that raccoon buried at the pet cemetery. And he added good times. I think Tammy then got the text later and said, oh, okay. I mean, the reason he did it is because if she had come home and asked why the ground was disturbed around there, it's because he, was not burying a raccoon, allegedly. I hope this isn't too personal, Nate, but can you share how the Daybell case has changed your life and what you were doing before all this happened? Oh, man. Well, I was reporting the news. I've been in news since 2006. I worked in TV for 9 years and then moved to eastern Idaho, and I was really worried I wouldn't have any news to report. I kid you not. And that no one would visit eastidahonews.com. And yet here we are. I still report on every day. It's called like general assignment reporting. I do positive news. I do, I did a story a couple weeks ago about a roof that collapsed on a bunch of cars because of a snow buildup. I do other crime stories. So I just kind of do whatever, and that's what I've always done. And I like that because it gives me variety. If I only had to do like politics, I'd go crazy. If I only had to do crime, I'd go crazy. So yeah, thank you for the question. And how my life has changed, every aspect of my life has changed. It has. And one day I'll have to go into that more, and my wife can come on and talk too. Before Chad Daybell's trial began, his children supported and believed he was manipulated by Lori. Do his kids still stand behind him? Do you know if they're going to be interviewed by any news agency? They did do one interview with 48 Hours a couple of years ago. You could probably find that online. They stood by their dad then. It appears they're standing by their dad now because John Pryor told us in court the other day that they will be taking the stand on their dad's behalf. So, yeah, I hope to interview them. Patty asks, will the prosecution be allowed to reference Lori's trial outcome since all testimony is now a matter of public record? As an example, when Pryor calls his expert witness, can Rob Wood on cross ask the expert witness if he or she is aware Lori was convicted with testimony from experts in that trial that testified to something different than what he or she said? Can Wood argue that the particular testimony has already been decided by a jury? I think overall the answer is no. That trial can't come up, can't be used to sway them to convict Chad because Lori's been convicted. This is a whole separate trial, and the judges said that, given them a special instruction about that. They also have a special instruction about the Arizona case, that there's criminal activity happening down there, but they should not take that into account here as far as the evidence and the charges in this particular case. Oh my gosh, my graphics are up. Thank you. I'm sorry. I've been sitting here talking the whole time. Here I am. Thank you for the texts. Are jurors permitted to take notes throughout the trial? If not, how can they remember everything in a 2-month span? Yes, they can take notes, but they have to turn them in at the end of each day. And when the trial's over, they can't keep them. So they can take notes. They just can't keep them. How come Chad's permitted to wear a shirt and tie, unlike Lori, who was in jail garb? No, Lori was dressed up every day during the trial. She was. After the trial and she was convicted, she had to wear jail garb. And so I imagine with Chad. But the judge has given them permission for Chad to dress up. He has been dressed up at every hearing except maybe the first one. He was in jail, a jail outfit. But yeah, he's allowed to wear everyday clothes, and so was she. Since the autopsy photos are not shown publicly for anyone in the room except the jurors, does Chad Daybell and his lawyer get to see the pictures at the same time? Can the prosecutor subpoena Chad to testify? That's from Sarah. Sarah, when they show the photos, there's monitors at the defense table and the prosecutor's table. And yes, Chad does see the photos as the time when the jurors see them. Any evidence that's portrayed at any time, Chad has the right to see, and he sees it there live. The prosecutors cannot subpoena him to testify. He does not have to testify on his behalf. The judge made this very clear during jury selection, that the jurors understood that they don't have to present one bit of evidence, and he doesn't need to testify in order for the trial to happen, that he's still presumed innocent. So no, they can't subpoena him. I think we'll stop there. Shout outs real quick. Becky Sue, Mary Tobert, Janet Frazee, Christina Reeves, Deborah Willoughby, Suzette Adams, Sherilyn Thomas, Jewel Casablanca Wagner, Joy Giles, Red Librarian, and Jody Fisher. Many of you said, how do I get a shout out? Just put in the comments, hey Nate, give me a shout out, and we'll try to pull your name up. We have a lot of really good questions that we haven't gotten to today. And so I hope that we can get to those tomorrow. I'll be back here. We'll recap everything that happens tomorrow. You can stay up to date with me by following me. There's my Facebook. There's my Instagram. A lot of family stuff on that. There's my X, and there's our EastIdahoNews.com YouTube channel. Would love for you to keep in touch. Got to say thank you again for all of the birthday love. It's weird. Second year in a row that my birthday, I've been covering the in Boise away from my family to cover this story. But thanks for spending my birthday evening here with me. And next year, Rob Wood also has a birthday. It was Friday, the prosecutor. Larry Woodcock also has a birthday. So I've told them next year when all this is over, we're going to have just a huge birthday party. And you all are invited. So please come. For now, I hope you have a really good night. I hope you will be back here tomorrow night. I'm Nate Eaton. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow night on Courtroom Insider.